Few tanks in War Thunder seems to divide opinion, quite like the M1A1 HC. It's often criticized for its weak hull armor, vulnerable turret, outdated thermals, and the fact that it sits at a battle rating where every mistake can be fatal. On top of that, the vehicle has become associated with poor team performance due to its popularity as a premium vehicle. With so many complaints surrounding the tank, it's easy to see why many players write it off as one of the weaker Abrams variant. But is the M1A1 HC really as bad as people say, or the community misunderstood this tank is actually designed to do? Let's find out. The M1A1 HC is a tank that receives surprising amount of criticism from the War Thunder community. Depending on who you ask, it's either one of the weakest top tier Abrams or a vehicle that's simply been left behind by the current meta. And honestly, I can understand where some of that frustration came from. The third ring is a well-known weak spot, and the hull is far from invulnerable. The thermals aren't particularly impressive for its battle rating, and the APS is so situational that most players forgot it's even there. It's very much decoration at this point, and I think part of the reason the M1A1 HC gets so much hate is because many players expect it to do something that it was never designed to do. To understand why, we need to look at where the tank came from. The M1A1 HC, short for Heavy Common, was developed during the 1990s as a part of an effort to standardize Abrams variants used by both the United States Army and the Marine Corps. Building on the combat lessons learned from the earlier Abrams models and the Gulf War, it incorporated improved depleted uranium armor protection while retaining the mobility and firepower that had defined the Abrams family since its introduction. And the M1A1 HC wasn't built to sit in open and absorb ground like Russian tanks does. The Abrams philosophy has always been centered around mobility, firepower, and getting the first shot off. The armor is there to save you when things go wrong, not to make you invincible. Kind of like jack of all trades, because America since World War II has always been a jack of all trades and master of none. When the players try to use the M1A1 HC as a frontline brawler, its weaknesses become painfully obvious. But when it's played aggressively using mobility, excellent gun handling, fast reload, and strong turret cheeks, it starts to make a lot more sense. So instead of asking whether the M1A1 HC is a bad tank, I think the better question is whether we are judging it by the wrong standards. And according to the USMC standpoint, the M1A1 HC wasn't meant to be an indestructible frontline brawler. The Marine Corps needed a tank that could be deployed overseas, operate alongside infantry, and adapt to a wide variety of combat environments, unlike the Army's Cold War focus on large armored warfare in Europe. The Marines expected to fight as expeditionary force, often far from established supply lines, and sometimes immediately after arriving from amphibious shipping. As a result, the M1A1 HC was designed around balance of protection, mobility, and firepower rather than relying on armor alone. Mobility was equally important. Powered by the AGT 1500 gas turbine engine, the M1A1 HC could accelerate quickly, reposition rapidly, and keep pace with mechanized force during fast-moving operations. For the Marines, this wasn't simply convenience, it was necessity. A tank supporting expeditionary operations needed to move where it was needed, when it was needed, often across difficult terrains and under rapidly changing battlefield conditions. The tank also incorporated several modifications tailored to the Marine Corps requirement: deep water fording equipment, reinforced tie-down points, and other expeditionary features allowed the vehicles to be transported aboard amphibious shipping and operate in environments where conventional armored formations might not be normally expected to fight. These changes reflected the Marine Corps' emphasis on global deployment and operational flexibility. And perhaps most importantly, the M1A1 HC retained the firepower that made the Abrams family so effective. Armed with the 120mm M256 smoothbore cannon, supported by the advanced fire control principle of seeing enemy first, engaging first, and destroying the threat before it had the opportunity to return effective fire. However, While the M1A1 HC was designed around the realities of modern warfare and Marine Corps doctrine, War Thunder's top-tier environment is a very different battlefield altogether. One of the biggest reasons for this is the way engagements happen. In real life, the Abrams was designed to fight at long ranges, often with support from reconnaissance assets, infantry, artillery, helicopter, and even aircraft. The goal was to identify threats before they could engage, strike first, and maintain the initiative throughout the battle. War Thunder doesn't really work that way. Most top-tier maps are relatively small compared to real-world engagement distances, and many battles quickly devolve into close-range fights around urban areas, narrow corridors, choke points, and instead of carefully maneuvering as part of combined arms force, the tanks often forced into direct engagements where weak spots become far more important than overall battlefield doctrine. This is where many of the M1A1 HC's design strengths begin to lose some of their value. Take mobility for example. In real-world doctrine, the Abrams' powerful turbine engine allowed it to rapidly reposition, exploit breakthroughs, and avoid unfavorable engagements. But in War Thunder, players often know exactly where enemies are likely to appear due to map familiarity. The ability to outmaneuver an opponent still matters, but it isn't as decisive when everyone is funneling through the same handful of routes every match. The same applies to armor protection. The M1A1 HC was designed with the understanding that armor was only one layer of survivability. Crew training, situational awareness, reconnaissance, and combined arms support were all expected to contribute to keeping the vehicle alive. In War Thunder, none of those factors exist in the same way. Instead, survivability is often reduced to whether a shell can penetrate a particular section of armor or not. As a result, weaknesses such as the turret ring, lower hull, the crew placement become far more noticeable than they would be in real combat. Players aren't engaging an Abrams as part of a larger battlefield system, they're engaging a collection of armor values and weak spots that can be memorized and exploited repeatedly. The tank's firepower also suffers from this difference in design philosophy. The M256 120mm gun was built around the concept of first round hit probability. Combined with the advanced fire control system and thermal sights, the Abrams was expected to engage targets accurately at ranges, where many opponents would struggle to respond effectively. In War Thunder, however, nearly every top-tier tank has accesses to laser rangefinder, thermal optics, stabilized guns, and powerful APFSDS ammunitions. The technological advantages that once helped distinguish the Abrams are largely shared across the entire top-tier roster. What was once a major advantage becomes simply the baseline expectation. Even the M1A1 HC's strongest asset, its turret armor, is affected by the game's mechanics. In reality, exposing only the turret behind cover would make the tank extremely difficult target to defeat. In War Thunder, experienced players already know exactly where to aim. The turret ring, gun mindlet, and other vulnerable areas are common knowledge among top-tier players, reducing some of the protection the tank was originally designed to provide. And perhaps most importantly, the Abrams was never intended to fight alone. The Marine Corps expected the M1A1 HC to operate as part of a larger combined arms force, working alongside infantry, reconnaissance unit, engineers, artillery, and air support. War Thunder strips away much of that context. The result is a vehicle that often judged solely on its ability to survive direct tank-on-tank engagements, rather than how it was originally intended to contribute in the battlefield. That's why I think the M1A1 HC feels so controversial in War Thunder. It's not necessarily because the tank is bad, it's because the environment it was designed for and the environment it fights in are fundamentally different. In conclusion, the M1A1 HC trades armor and survivability for mobility, firepower, and gun handling, making it a capable tank in the right hands, but an unforgiving one for the players who try to use it as a traditional brawler. And with this, it marks the end of the video, and thank you for watching to the end. It really appreciates me, all the likes, the comments, and the subscribes. and let me know if I make any mistakes or I missed something in the comments so I can improve better in the next video that I will make, because I'm really passionate about these things. Just point it out to me and I will try and work it out. So thank you, and I'll see you again.